You have 60 seconds to realize you aren't the hunters. You are the bait. Aerin did not scream. She did not beg. Her voice cut through the damp warehouse air like a cold blade. Marco froze. He was a professional hitman who had broken many men, but he had never seen a victim look at him with pity. He looked down at her cheap, gray waitress apron. It was stained with coffee and grease. But Aerin's eyes were not the eyes of a servant. They were steady. They were terrifyingly still. She wasn't looking at his gun. She was watching the digital clock on the wall, like a queen waiting for a show to start. "We checked your life, waitress," Marco hissed. He tried to sound brave, but his skin crawled. "No parents. No siblings. You were a ghost with no one to call." Aerin tilted her head. Her dark eyes looked like polished obsidian. "I know your name, Marco. I also know that your radio just went silent. That is a level 4 lockdown. It means your own boss has already left you here to die." She leaned forward, the zip ties on her wrists clicking in the silence. "I spent 10 years pretending to be a nobody so my brother could sleep at night. You just gave him a reason to wake up. A waitress should not know mafia tactical codes. She should not be able to name a hitman's blood type just by looking at him." But as the warehouse lights suddenly flickered and turned a deep blood red, the air grew heavy. The black waitress from the diner was gone. In her place sat the only living blood relative of Ji-hoon, the city's most feared Mafia King. The heavy steel doors began to groan and bend under a force that shouldn't exist. The kidnappers finally understood their fatal mistake. They had not trapped a girl. They had trapped themselves in a cage with the only thing the monster actually loved. The Golden Spoon Diner always smelled of burnt coffee and old grease. Aerin moved through the room like a shadow. She carried 3 heavy plates on one arm. Her hands never shook. She walked past the cracked tiles and the sticky tables with a quiet, steady pace. "Hey, are you deaf? I asked for more coffee 10 minutes ago." A man at table 4 shouted. His face was red, and he smelled like cheap gin. He slammed his mug down hard. The other customers looked away, feeling nervous. But Aerin did not jump. She did not get angry. She turned toward him with a face that showed nothing at all. "I'm sorry for the wait, sir," she said. Her voice was soft but very cold. She poured the coffee. Her hand was so still that not a single drop spilled. The man stared at her. He wanted her to cry or yell. He wanted to break her. But Aerin looked right through him. To her, he was just a loud noise. She had learned a long time ago that being nobody was the only way to stay safe. She wore no rings. She wore no makeup. In this city, she was just a black waitress with no family. She was someone people saw, but never remembered. 2 miles away, in a tall tower of glass and steel, the world was silent. Ji-hoon sat in a large leather chair. The room was dark, except for the glow of a giant wall of TV screens. On the main screen, he was watching Aerin. Ji-hoon's fingers tapped his desk. His eyes were famous for being as cold as ice. But when he looked at the screen, they softened. He watched Aerin clear a table. He watched how she handled a rude man with a patience that was almost scary. He knew she got that strength from their mother. There were 12 hidden cameras in that diner. They were not there to watch the money. They were there to watch her. Ji-hoon had spent 10 years hiding his sister. He had erased her name from every computer. He had paid people to make sure she had no past. He had even burned down a building once, just because a stranger had looked at the diner for too long. "Boss," a voice said over the speaker. "The Vipers are moving. They are looking for a way to hurt us. They are getting desperate." Ji-hoon did not look away from Aerin. He watched her tuck a lock of hair behind her ear. "Let them look," he whispered. "But if they touch that diner, I will take their lives." Back at the diner, Aerin felt a strange chill. She looked up. Her eyes landed right on a small smoke detector on the ceiling. She knew a camera was inside. For 1 second, she didn't look like a waitress anymore. Her eyes turned sharp and smart. She knew her brother was watching. She allowed it, because it was the only bridge left between them. She picked up a tray and walked into the kitchen. She was a ghost in a gray uniform. She was nobody, and she liked it that way. But as the kitchen door swung shut, she did not see the black car parked across the street. Inside that car, men were watching her. They didn't believe in ghosts. They only saw a girl with no one to protect her. They were about to make a mistake that would burn the city down. The black car across the street sat like a hungry animal. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old cigarettes. Two men from the Viper gang watched the front door of the diner. They wanted to hurt the Ice King, Ji-hoon. They thought they had found his only weakness. "Are you sure about this?" the younger man asked. His hand shook. "The Ice King is a monster. If we poke him, he might kill us all." The older man, Marco, laughed. It was a mean, dry sound. Ji-hoon is only strong because he has nothing to lose. No wife, no kids. But look at that girl. He pointed a thick finger at the window. Aerin was wiping a table. The king's guards have been watching this block for months. They aren't here for the food. They are here for her. Marco opened a file. It was empty. No last name. No family history. She is a ghost. Ji-hoon spent a lot of money to hide her. That means she is the most important thing in his life. The younger man looked at Aerin. She looked so small and plain in her gray uniform. She looks like an easy target. No one will miss a waitress. Exactly, Marco grinned. We take her. Then we tell Ji-hoon he must give us his shipping docks to get her back. It is a simple trade. He will choose his money over a girl. Inside the diner, the lunch rush was over. Aerin felt eyes on her again. It was a heavy, greasy feeling. She knew the difference between her brother's cameras and the eyes of a hunter. She had grown up around dangerous men. She could smell trouble before it opened the door. She went to the back alley to take out the trash. The sun was going down. The shadows were long and sharp against the brick walls. Aerin stopped near the heavy trash bin. She did not turn around, but she felt the air change. The alley was too quiet. "You are working late, sweetheart," a voice said from the dark. Aerin dropped the trash bag. She did not scream. Her heart did not race. Instead, she felt a cold, calm feeling in her bones. She turned slowly. Marco and his partner were blocking the way out. They held guns, but they were smiling. "You are coming with us," Marco said. He stepped into the light. "Don't fight. You're just a waitress with no one to call. No one is coming to save you." Aerin looked at the gun. Then she looked Marco right in the eye. For a moment, the simple waitress was gone. The look in her eyes made Marco stop smiling. She thought of her brother in his tall tower. She thought of his promise to keep her safe. "You think I'm the weakest person in this city," Aerin said. Her voice was quiet and steady. "But you are wrong. You didn't find a family in the records because my brother killed everyone who tried to write our names down." Marco laughed. He tried to hide the fear in his chest. "You talk big for a girl in an apron. Grab her." Aerin did not fight back. She let them tie her wrists with zip ties. She let them push her toward the black car. She knew that the moment she disappeared, the cameras would show an empty room. Her brother would see it. The city was about to turn red, and these men were walking into a fire. "You were right about one thing, Marco," Aerin whispered as they slammed the car door. "I am a ghost, and ghosts are very hard to kill." Ji-hoon stood by the window of his high tower. The city lights below looked like tiny diamonds, but he did not see them. He only cared about one light in the whole world, and it was 2 miles away at the Golden Spoon Diner. He walked into his war room. The room was cold and filled with the hum of many computers. A wall of glass screens showed live video from all over the city. His men stood in silence. They knew the rules. No one spoke to the Ice King unless he spoke first. Ji-hoon's eyes went straight to the main screen. It showed the back alley of the diner. Usually, he would see Aerin taking out the trash at this exact time. He liked to watch her work because it meant she was safe. It meant his walls were holding. But the screen was empty. The trash bag lay on the ground. The heavy steel bin was open, but Aerin was not there. Ji-hoon froze. For 10 years, his heart had been a block of ice. He had faced guns, knives, and betrayal without blinking. But now a hot, sharp pain stabbed him in the chest. His breath caught in his throat. It was a feeling he had forgotten. It was terror. "Rewind the feed," Ji-hoon said. His voice was very quiet. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. One of his tech experts moved fast. The video on the screen flew backward. It stopped at the moment 2 men stepped out of the shadows. Ji-hoon watched the black car. He watched the man named Marco grab his sister. He saw the zip ties. He saw them push Aerin into the back seat. The room became so quiet you could hear the men breathing. The guards looked at the floor. They were terrified. They had failed to watch the one person who mattered. Ji-hoon did not yell. He did not break the furniture. He simply stared at the image of the black car on the screen. His eyes turned dark like a stormy sea. The Ice King was gone. Something much more dangerous was taking his place. Who are they? Ji-hoon asked. The Vipers, boss, the lead guard whispered. They have been talking about taking territory in the south. They must think she is just a waitress. Ji-hoon turned slowly. His face was a mask of death. They think she has no family. They think they can use her to bargain with me. He walked over to his desk and picked up a heavy gold coin. He crushed it in his hand until the metal bent. It didn't just take a girl. They stole the only light left in my life. They want a war. I will give them a funeral. He looked back at the screen one last time. He saw the empty alleyway where Aerin had stood just minutes ago. The terror in his heart was turning into a cold, hard fire. Shut down the city, Ji-hoon ordered. Close the bridges. Lock the docks. If a bird flies out of this district, I want it shot down. I want every Viper found. And I want them to know that the Ice King is coming for his sister. His men scrambled to follow his orders. The war room became a hive of activity. Computers beeped and phones rang. The news spread through the underworld like a virus. The Ice King had broken his silence. Ji-hoon put on his black coat. He checked his watch. You have 1 hour of life left, Marco, he whispered to the screen. Make it count. He walked out of the room, his footsteps echoing like drum beats. He wasn't a businessman anymore. He was a brother who had lost his way, and he would burn the whole city to find his path back to Aerin. The memory always smelled like smoke and expensive perfume. 15 years ago, the world was not made of glass towers and silent war rooms. It was made of a warm house, a mother's laugh, and a father who told stories of a kingdom he was building for his children. Then, the screaming started. A young Ji-hoon, only 12 years old, stood in the middle of their grand living room. He saw the front door break. He heard the loud, angry sounds of guns. His father fell first. His mother grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with terror. She pushed something small and soft into his chest. It was 5-year-old Aerin. Run, Ji-hoon, his mother whispered. Her voice was shaking. Keep her safe. Hide her. Don't let them see her. Ji-hoon did not cry. He did not have time. He grabbed Erin's small hand and pulled her toward the kitchen. The sounds of breaking glass and heavy boots followed them. They reached a small pantry cupboard hidden behind a wooden panel. He shoved Aerin inside. The space was tiny and smelled like dried herbs. Erin's lip trembled. She was about to cry out in fear. Ji-hoon quickly knelt down and put his hands on her shoulders. He looked into her eyes with a seriousness that no child should ever have. Aerin, listen to me, he whispered. You have to be a ghost now. Do not make a sound. Do not even breathe loud. Where are you going? She sobbed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Ji-hoon looked at the door. He could hear the killers getting closer. He knew he had to lead them away. He knew that if they found one child, they would look for the second. He had to become the target, so she could become invisible. I'm going to draw them away, Ji-hoon said. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. Listen to me, little sister. The world is a dangerous place for people with our name, but they can't hurt what they can't find. From now on, you're nobody. You have no brother. You have no family. If the world forgets you exist, they can never hurt you. Promise? She whispered. I promise, Ji-hoon said. He closed the cupboard door. He heard the click of the lock. He stood up, wiped the tears from his own face, and ran toward the back stairs, making as much noise as he could. He let them see his shadow. He let them chase him into the woods. He survived that night, but the boy he used to be died in those woods. He spent the next 10 years climbing over bodies to reach the top of the city. He became the Ice King because he had to be cold to protect the one thing he had left. He built a wall of silence around Aerin. He watched her from afar as she grew up, went to school, and became a waitress. Every time she felt lonely, he felt a sting in his heart. But he stayed away. He kept his promise. He kept her invisible because he loved her more than his own life. Now, standing in his Cold War room years later, Ji-hoon felt that old smoke in his lungs again. The Vipers had broken his covenant. They had looked into the shadows and found the ghost he had spent his whole life hiding. I told you the world would forget you, Aerin, he whispered to the dark. But I didn't say I would. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small old toy. It was the ear of a stuffed rabbit, torn off on that terrible night 15 years ago. He squeezed it tight. The time for hiding was over. The world was about to remember exactly who Aerin was, and they're going to pay for that knowledge in blood. The city did not wake up slowly that evening. It stopped breathing. At exactly 7 o'clock, every street light in the southern district flickered once and turned a deep, warning red. It was not a glitch. It was a signal. The glowing red light spilled over the sidewalks, turning the asphalt the color of blood. In the underworld, this was known as a total eclipse. It meant that the Ice King was no longer sitting on his throne. He was on the warpath. From the dark alleys and the underground garages, black SUVs began to emerge. They moved in perfect lines like a funeral march. These were the Blackguard, Ji-hoon's personal soldiers. They did not use sirens. They did not yell. They simply drove to the center of every major road and stopped. Men in charcoal suits and tactical vests stepped out. They carried weapons that the city police didn't even have. They began to turn cars around and block the bridges. People on the streets froze in confusion. Shop owners pulled down their metal shutters. Businessmen in the district looked at their phones, but the signal was gone. Ji-hoon had cut the towers. He had silenced the city so he could hear the Viper scream. In a high-end club across town, a rival boss watched the red lights from his balcony. He gripped his glass until it cracked. Why? He whispered to his second-in-command. Why is Ji-hoon doing this? We haven't touched his money. We haven't touched his ports. Why is he starting a citywide war for a girl who pours coffee? The question was spreading through the shadows like a fire. The mystery was driving the underworld mad. Ji-hoon was a man of logic. He never risked his empire for nothing. To the world, Aerin was just a black waitress with a name tag and a tired smile. She had no wealth. She had no title. Yet, the most powerful man in the country was burning his reputation and his billions to find her before the sun went down. He's lost his mind. One of the Vipers muttered as he watched the Blackguard surround their hideout. All this for a nobody? She's just a waitress. But as the red light hit the windows of the Viper's secret basement, the mood changed. The kidnappers looked at Aerin, who was still sitting in her chair. She looked up at the red glow reflecting in the glass. For the first time, she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew the dragon was finally at the door. Outside, the air began to hum with the sound of a heavy helicopter. The searchlights cut through the red fog, searching for a black sedan. Ji-hoon was not just looking for his sister. He was hunting for the fools who thought they could touch her. The mystery of why he cared didn't matter to the soldiers on the street. They only knew one thing. The city belonged to the Ice King, and tonight, the Ice King was a brother. The war had begun, and the price of a waitress had just become higher than the value of the entire city. The basement was damp and cold, but the air inside was starting to feel heavy for the men standing over Aerin. The red light from the street above bled through a small, dirty window, painting the room in a color that looked like a warning. Marco paced back and forth, his boots clicking on the concrete. He kept checking his phone, but there was no signal. The total eclipse had cut them off from the rest of the world. Why is he doing this? Marco muttered, his voice sounding thin. It is just a girl. Why is the city turning red for a girl who serves eggs and toast? Aerin sat in her chair, her hands still tied. She did not look like a prisoner. She looked like she was at work, watching a difficult customer make a fool of himself. She tilted her head and looked at Marco. Her eyes were calm, but they were sharp. You are wondering about your wife, aren't you, Marco? She asked quietly. Marco stopped pacing. He turned to her, his face turning pale. What did you say? Your wife, Elena, Aerin said. Her voice was steady. She wears a blue coat on Tuesdays. She likes to buy bread from the bakery on 5th Street at exactly 4 o'clock. My brother knows this. In fact, he has known it for 3 years. Marco's partner, the younger man, stepped back. Al, how does she know that? Aerin did not look at the younger man. She kept her eyes on Marco. And you, Min Jae, she said, shifting her gaze to the younger kidnapper. Your mother lives in a small house with a yellow door in the suburbs. She has a garden with roses. She thinks her son works in a bank. She doesn't know you spend your nights hiding in basements. The room went silent. The only sound was the drip of water from a leaky pipe. The kidnappers looked at each other. They had spent their lives being the hunters. They were used to people being afraid of them. But now, they realized that they had been watched for a long time. They were the ones being studied. "You think you chose me because I am weak," Aerin said. She stood up slowly, the zip ties on her wrists clicking. She didn't try to run. She just stood tall. "But my brother did not hide me because I was a secret. He hid me because I'm the only person he trusts. I am the one who keeps the records. I know every person who works for the Vipers. I know where you sleep. I know what you fear." Marco pointed his gun at her, but his hand was shaking. "Shut up. You are just a waitress. A waitress who has seen every face in this city," Aerin replied. "A waitress who knows that 10 minutes ago, a black SUV pulled up to your wife's house, Marco. And another one is parked in front of your mother's yellow door, Min-jae. My brother does not play games with money. He plays games with hearts." The first crack in their confidence was deep. Marco looked at his silent phone. He looked at the red light on the floor. He realized that they weren't holding a hostage. They were holding a bomb that was about to explode. "He is coming," Aerin said. Her voice was almost a whisper, but it filled the room. "And when he gets here, he won't ask for a trade. He will ask why you thought you could touch his blood. You should pray that he gets here before his men do." Min-jae dropped his cigarette. He looked at the heavy steel door. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of the Ice King. He was afraid of the woman in the gray apron. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect of their ruin. The air in the basement felt thin. Min-jae, the younger guard, was pacing like a trapped animal. Aerin's words about his mother and the house with the yellow door had climbed under his skin. He couldn't stop looking at the red light outside the window. He was losing his mind, and he needed someone to blame for the fear in his chest. "Stop talking," Min-jae barked. He stomped over to Aerin, his face twisted with anger. "You think you're smart? You're just a girl in chair. Your brother isn't here yet, but I am." He reached out a large, heavy hand to grab her throat. He wanted to see her choke. He wanted to see her look like a victim again. Aerin did not move away. She did not scream. As his hand closed in, she shifted her body just an inch. Even with her wrists tied behind her back, her movements were fluid and fast. She leaned her head back and then drove her shoulder forward. At the same time, she used her bound hands to find a specific spot on Min-jae's inner wrist. She didn't punch him. She didn't use brute strength. She simply pressed 2 fingers into the soft gap between his bones. Min-jae's eyes went wide. A silent shock traveled up his arm. His hand did not close around her neck. Instead, it went limp. His fingers curled like dead leaves, and his entire arm fell to his side, useless and numb. He gasped, falling to his knees as a wave of nausea hit him. "What did you do?" Marco yelled, drawing his gun. He looked at his partner, who was now clutching his deadened arm and gasping for air. "What did you do to him?" Aerin sat back in her chair. Her breathing had not changed. "I told you that you didn't check the records well enough," she said softly. "My brother didn't just hide me. He made sure that if I was ever found, I wouldn't be helpless. He hired the best masters in the world to teach me how to turn a man's own body against him." Marco stood 3 feet away, his gun trembling. He realized now why Aerin hadn't fought them in the alley. She wasn't waiting for a rescue because she was weak. She was waiting because she was patient. She was a weapon that had been kept in a velvet box for 10 years, and they had just opened the lid. "I could have killed him," Aerin said, her voice echoing in the cold room. "There's a spot on the neck that stops the heart. There's a spot on the temple that ends the light. I chose the wrist because I want you to be able to walk. I want you to be standing on your own 2 feet when Ji-hoon walks through that door." Min-jae groaned on the floor, his face pale. Marco looked at the waitress. She was still wearing her simple gray uniform. Her hair was still pulled back. She looked like the woman who served him coffee yesterday. But the illusion was gone. She was the most dangerous person in the room, and she was still tied to a chair. Aerin looked at the door. She could hear the distant sound of tires screaming on the pavement above. The ground began to vibrate. "He's closer now," she whispered, "and he is very, very angry." Marco didn't answer. He didn't even move. He just watched the woman who had turned his partner into a heap of meat with a single touch. For the first time, he realized that the zip ties on her wrists weren't there to keep her in the chair. They were the only things keeping him alive. The heavy steel door at the top of the stairs groaned as it was thrown open. A man walked down into the basement, followed by 4 guards with rifles. This was Wu Jin, the head of the Viper gang. He was a man who loved gold rings and expensive suits. He had spent his whole life trying to steal power from the Ice King. He looked at Min Jae, who was still on the floor, clutching his numb arm. He looked at Marco, who was shaking and pointing a gun at a woman tied to a chair. Wu Jin sneered. He thought his men were being weak. "What is wrong with you?" Wu Jin barked. He walked over to Aerin and grabbed her chin. He forced her to look at him. "It is just a waitress. Why are you both acting like you have seen a ghost?" Aerin did not look away. She looked at Wu Jin with a cold, steady gaze that made his smile fade. "You should listen to them, Wu Jin," she said. "They're the only ones in this room who understand how little time you have left." Wu Jin's phone finally buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. The signal was back, but only because a message was being broadcasted to every phone in the city. It was a photo of the Viper's secret hideout. Under the photo was a single word, delete. Wu Jin's face went from red to a ghostly white. He looked at the photo. Then he looked at Aerin. He saw the way she held herself. He saw the Park Ji family crest on the small, hidden pin she had tucked under her apron. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't kidnapped a pawn. He had kidnapped the only blood relative of the most dangerous man in the country. You're his sister," Wu Jin whispered. The gold rings on his fingers tapped against each other as his hands began to shake. He told everyone his family was dead. He said he was alone. He lied. Aerin said. He wanted me to have a life where I didn't have to look over my shoulder. You took that away from him. You forced him to show the world his only soft spot. Wu Jin panicked. He shoved his gun into his holster and held up his hands. "Wait, we can fix this. Marco, put the gun away. We aren't hurting her." He turned back to Aerin, his voice pleading. "Tell Ji-hoon I didn't know. I'll give him the southern docks. I'll give him half my business. Just tell him to stop the lockdown. Tell him we can negotiate." Aerin let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound that had no joy in it. "Negotiate?" she asked. "Wu Jin, you still don't understand the man you are dealing with." She leaned forward, her eyes glowing in the red light of the basement. Ji-hoon is a businessman when it comes to money. He is a politician when it comes to territory. But when it comes to family, he is something else entirely. "What do you mean?" Wu Jin asked, his voice cracking. "My brother doesn't negotiate for family," Aerin said, her voice dropping to a whisper that chilled the room. "He cleanses. He doesn't want your docks. He doesn't want your money. He wants to make sure that no one ever thinks about touching me again. And the only way he can do that is to make sure you, your men, and your entire name disappear from this earth." The sound of a heavy hydraulic ram hit the warehouse's outer doors. The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Ice King wasn't knocking. He was tearing the world down to get to his heart. Wu Jin looked at the stairs. He looked at the door. He realized there was no exit. He had tried to play a game of chess, but he had accidentally started an apocalypse. Aerin sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. She didn't need to see what was coming next. She already knew how the story ended. The heavy shaking of the building stopped. For a moment, there was a silence so deep it felt like the world had died. Then the power died. The red glow from the window vanished. The hum of the heater cut out. The basement fell into a darkness so thick that Wu Jin could not even see his own hand in front of his face. "Stay together," Wu Jin screamed. His voice bounced off the cold walls. "Get the flashlights. Aim at the stairs." The guards fumbled with their gear. Small beams of light cut through the dark, shaking as the men breathed in short, panicked gasps. They pointed their guns at the only door. They expected a loud attack. They expected shouting and boots. Instead, they heard nothing but a soft click from the ceiling. A green gas began to hiss into the room. It wasn't poison, but it was thick. It turned the flashlight beams into dull, useless blurs. "I hear something," Min Jae yelled. He was still holding his numb arm. He fired his gun into the dark. Bang! Bang! The flashes of light showed a shadow moving near the back wall. But when the light stayed there, the shadow was gone. A soft thud sounded from the corner. One of Wu Jin's guards disappeared. No one saw him go. There was no scream, just a quiet rustle of fabric and then silence. Where is Chun? Wu Jin gasped, his flashlight swinging wildly. Chun, answer me. Another thud. This time it was closer. The third guard was gone. The Vipers were being picked off like insects in a web. It wasn't a fight. It was a harvest. Ji-hoon's men were using thermal goggles. They could see the heat of the kidnappers' bodies glowing like candles in the dark. To the blackguard, the Vipers were easy targets. To the Vipers, they were fighting ghosts. Please! Min Jae cried out. He threw his gun away. The fear was too much. I didn't do anything. It was Marco's idea. A dark shape dropped from the ceiling pipes behind Min Jae. A gloved hand covered his mouth, and he was pulled into the shadows before he could take another breath. Now, only Wu Jin and Marco were left. They stood back to back, their flashlights spinning in circles. Aerin! Wu Jin screamed into the blackness. Tell them to stop. We will let you go. Just tell them to stop. Aerin's voice came out of the dark. She sounded perfectly calm. She hadn't moved from her chair. I told you, Wu Jin. My brother doesn't negotiate. You are not in a deal anymore. You are in a grave. Suddenly, a single, powerful flashlight turned on from the doorway. The light was so bright it blinded them. A man stepped into the room. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't carry a rifle. He walked with his hands in his pockets, his black coat flowing behind him. The light hit his face, showing skin as pale as marble and eyes that looked like they were made of frozen glass. It was Ji-hoon. He didn't look at Wu Jin. He didn't look at Marco. He walked straight through the smoke and the shadows until he stood in front of Aerin. The black guards stood behind him, their red laser sights dotting Wu Jin's chest like ladybugs. Ji-hoon reached out. His hand, usually so steady and cold, shook just a little bit as he touched Aerin's cheek. He looked at the zip ties on her wrists. He looked at the dirt on her waitress uniform. Did they hurt you? Ji-hoon asked. His voice was low, but it made the walls vibrate. I am okay, brother, Aerin whispered. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. He stood up and turned to face Wu Jin. The Ice King did not look angry. He looked like he was watching something that had already ceased to exist. You touched the only thing I love, Ji-hoon said to the trembling boss. The darkness was for my men. The light is so you can see exactly what happens to people who break my promise. The bright tactical light from the doorway was blinding. Wu Jin and Marco covered their eyes, waiting for a hail of bullets. They expected Ji-hoon to scream, to bark orders, or to strike them down. Instead, the Ice King did something that shocked everyone in the room. He ignored the kidnappers entirely. Ji-hoon walked past the shaking men as if they were nothing more than dust on the floor. He stepped toward the center of the room where Aerin sat. His heavy boots clicked on the concrete, the only sound in the terrifying silence. When he reached her, the man who ruled the city with a fist of iron did something nobody had ever seen. He knelt. The most powerful man in the underworld lowered himself onto the dirty basement floor. He sat on his knees at Aerin's feet. His movements were slow and full of a strange, deep respect. The black guards stood in a circle around them, their guns pointed outward, creating a wall of steel to protect this private moment. I am sorry, Aerin, Ji-hoon whispered. His voice was no longer cold. It was thick with a brother's pain. I promised you a life of peace. I promised you that you would never have to see this world again. I failed you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver knife. With a gentle touch, he sliced through the plastic zip ties on her wrists. He didn't just let the pieces fall. He caught them in his hand as if he were removing thorns from a rose. He took her hands in his and rubbed her wrists where the plastic had left red marks. I am fine, Ji-hoon, Aerin said. She reached out and touched his face. Her hand was steady. The promise wasn't broken by you. It was broken by them. Ji-hoon stood up, but he didn't let go of her hand. He turned her toward the room, facing the terrified remains of the Viper gang. Wu Jin was trembling so hard he could barely stand. He looked at the way Ji-hoon held the waitress. He looked at the way the elite soldiers bowed their heads as she stood. You called her a nobody, Ji-hoon said. His voice was a low growl that filled the basement. You told the city she was just a waitress with no family. You thought she was a disposable girl in a gray apron. He reached out and unpinned the cheap plastic name tag from Aerin's uniform. He dropped it onto the floor and crushed it under his boot. Then, he took a heavy gold ring from his own finger, the signet ring of the Park Ji dynasty, and placed it in Aerin's palm. "Look at her," Ji-hoon commanded. The blackguard all clicked their heels together at once. "She is not a servant. She is not a secret. She is Aerin Park Ji. She is the sole heiress to everything I own. She is the heart of this family, and you have put your filthy hands on her." The realization hit Woo Jin like a physical weight. The nobody was the queen. The waitress he had planned to trade for a few shipping docks was the owner of the very ground he stood on. "Please," Woo Jin gasped, falling to his knees. "We didn't know. We thought she was alone." "She is never alone," Ji-hoon said. He tucked Aerin's arm into his, shielding her with his body. "Every camera she looked at was my eye. Every street she walked was my porch. And today, every man who saw her face in this basement will be a memory." Ji-hoon began to lead Aerin toward the stairs. He didn't look back at the kidnappers. He didn't need to. He had given his order with a single look. As they walked into the light, Aerin didn't look like a victim being rescued. She walked with her head high, her spine straight, and a gold ring clutched in her hand. The waitress was gone. The princess of the underworld had returned. The air outside the warehouse was cold, but the red lights of the city made the night feel like it was burning. Ji-hoon led Aerin toward his armored car. His hand was tight around hers, as if he feared she might vanish if he let go. Behind them, the warehouse was a tomb. The black guards stood at the entrance, their faces hidden behind masks, waiting for the final word. Ji-hoon stopped at the door of the car. He turned to look at the building, then he looked at his sister. His eyes were hard and dark. The Ice King was ready to finish what the Vipers had started. "They are inside," Ji-hoon said. His voice was flat and heavy. "Woo Jin, Marco, and the others. They took your piece. They put their hands on you. In our world, Aerin, the debt for blood is paid in blood. I have given the order. They will not see tomorrow." Aerin looked at the warehouse. She could see the shadows of the men through the dirty windows. She thought about the pressure point she had used on Min Jae. She thought about the fear in Woo Jin's eyes when he realized who she was. She felt the weight of the gold ring in her hand, the symbol of a family that had spent decades choosing violence to solve every problem. "No," Aerin said quietly. Ji-hoon frowned. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "No, Aerin, they try to break you. If I let them live, the city will think I am weak. They will think you are a target again. I have to erase them to protect you." Aerin shook her head. She reached up and touched the lapel of her brother's expensive black coat. "You spent 10 years trying to keep me out of this world, Ji-hoon. You wanted me to be nobody because you didn't want my hands to be stained like yours. If you kill them for me, you are bringing the stain to my door." Ji-hoon stayed silent. He was a man who only knew how to destroy his enemies. To him, mercy was a mistake. "I don't want revenge," Aerin continued. Her voice was simple and clear. "Revenge is just more blood. I want justice. Hand them over to the authorities. Give the police the files you have on the Vipers. Empty their bank accounts and give the money to the families they have hurt. Let them spend the rest of their lives in a small cell, knowing they lost everything to a waitress." The Black Guard watched from the shadows. They had never seen anyone challenge the Ice King. They expected Ji-hoon to grow angry. But as he looked into Aerin's eyes, he saw the light he had fought so hard to protect. She wasn't being weak. She was being the person their mother wanted her to be. She was the moral compass he had lost long ago. Ji-hoon looked at his lead commander. He hesitated for a long second, the fire in his heart fighting with the love for his sister. Finally, he gave a small, sharp nod. "Change of plans," Ji-hoon barked. "Call the chief of police. Give him the Viper files. All of them. And make sure Woo Jin and his men are in chains before the sun rises. If they ever leave a prison cell, I want the head of whoever signed the papers." The commander bowed and moved quickly to obey. Aerin felt the tension leave her brother's body. He leaned his forehead against hers and let out a long, shaky breath. "You are too good for this city, Aerin," he whispered. "No," she replied, a small smile finally touching her lips. "I'm just the only one who knows that even a ghost deserves a fair trial." She stepped into the car, leaving the gray apron and the name tag behind in the dirt. She had chosen justice, but the world now knew the truth. The Ice King had a heart, and that heart had a name. The sun began to rise over the city. It turned the gray buildings into gold. Aerin stood on the high balcony of the Park G headquarters. Below her, the red street lights were turning back to white. The total eclipse was over, but the city was not the same. Every person in the streets now knew the name of the girl who had been invisible for 10 years. Aerin looked down at her clothes. She was wearing a black silk suit that cost more than she used to earn in a year. The fabric was soft and smooth. It felt like power. But then, she reached into her pocket. She pulled out the plastic golden spoon, name tag, she had saved from the dirt. With a steady hand, she pinned it to the expensive silk. Jihoon walked out onto the balcony. He was no longer wearing his tactical gear. He looked like the king again, but his eyes were tired. He stood beside his sister and looked out at the empire they now shared. "The news is everywhere," Jihoon said. "The Vipers are in jail. Their business is gone. The other gangs are terrified. They know that if they look at a diner the wrong way, the Ice King will come for them." He paused, looking at the name tag on her chest. "Why are you still wearing that, Aerin? You don't have to be a waitress anymore. You own the building. You own the street. You own the city." Aerin touched the plastic tag. "I wear this so I don't forget," she said. "For 10 years, people looked at me and saw nobody. They were rude, or they were kind, or they were invisible. It taught me the truth about people. It taught me who is worth protecting." Jihoon smiled. It was a real smile, the kind he hadn't felt since they were children in the cupboard. "So what now? Do we close the diner? Do you want a palace?" Aerin turned to him. She looked at the gold ring on her finger and then at the city below. "No, we don't close it. We make it the heart of the district. I will still go there. I will still pour coffee. But now, when I look at a customer, they will know that they're being watched by the woman who holds the keys to the city." She wasn't just a waitress, and she wasn't just a mafia heiress. She was both. She was the nobody who had become the queen. She had found a way to bridge the two worlds, the world of simple breakfast plates and the world of silver knives. "The world forgot I existed," Aerin said, looking at the rising sun. "But now, I am the one who will make sure they never forget the rules again." Jihoon nodded. He stepped back, giving her the space to lead. The Ice King was still powerful, but he finally understood that his sister was the true strength of the family. Together, they watched the city wake up. The black waitress was gone, but the legend of Aerin Park G was just beginning.